Okay, we're back with video number 9 of carving a caricature figure with just hand tools. We're only using hand tools. Other than the power bandsaw it took to cut that block out, and the drill that I used to drill the holes through the legs, we are back with this fella. I took the time to draw the belt in. This is where the separation is between the pants and the shirt. Now, you may want to put a vest on him, you may want to put a jacket on him. That's entirely up to you. That's the individual customization that I was talking about. You may decide to do whatever you want to, but at least I know where the excuse me, at least I know where the belt is, and that allows me to put in the pockets. Pockets go all the way down to the seam. Can do that on both sides. Pockets go down to the seam. Now we're going to want to trim up the legs and the shoes and the body, but we started doing the arms during the last video, and that's what we want to continue on. I'm going to put on my safety, and we're going to continue working on that both sides, and that'll allow us to trim this down, and then we can work a little bit more on the head and the legs. But again, I like outlining everything with a V-tool. That way I know where it's going to go. And so I'll just do my V-tool, and we're looking at where the arms are, and do we like them where they are in terms of where the elbows are, roughly in the same spot. Where's the bottom of the arm? Where's the back of the arm? So we've got a lot of wiggle room because there's a lot of heft here. So I started by making indentation cuts here, stop cuts down in the corner of the elbows, and we were able to pull some of this out of here using a V-tool, or not a V-tool, using a fishtail gouge and using a knife. And you can make these arms as deep back in there as you want to. Let's go back here and do that on this side. Gonna make a stop cut there, gonna make a stop cut there, and we're just gonna carve in. We're just taking off so that we can remove that wood to get those arms to separate out. Now I left off last time making this cut here, and we're gonna come back to that here because we'll come back to that here. But what we want to do then is just continue working on where this arm is going to fit into. So I'm back to my trusty fishtail gouge because I really like this tool. This, as I said in one of the earlier videos, this is one of my oldest tools. I went to a wood carving show here in Boise many years ago, and Gil and Bonnie Drake were there, and I had seen other people carve. I hadn't been carving for very long, but I had seen other people carving, and I had been able to use one of these tools here. Somebody loaned it to me, and I was able to use it, and I really just enjoy the idea of the fishtail gouge, because if you're new to carving, sometimes one of the things you have to be careful with is how long can your hands hold out in any particular session. So let's say you have all day to carve. You're not in a big hurry, but if you've got 2 hours to carve and you need to do something in a hurry, deadline for a show, deadline for a commission, somebody wants it, you want to give it to a grandkid for their birthday, whatever, grabbing that knife, and most of the knife handles that I see are not sticky, they don't have a lot of grip to them, they're meant to look nice too. You want to buy a good tool and you want to buy a nice looking tool. And so a lot of these tools have a finish to them that can get slick with your hands getting sweaty. So it's just one of those things you have to take into consideration, that you may not always be able to just pick that up and grip it with your hands as they are. Last one of these I made him kind of hefty. I'm going to move him back a little bit. I don't know that I really want him overly broad in the torso, but I don't want him to be a skinny little guy. I've done several skinny cowboys in the last little bit, and I like doing them, but I'm also going to take into consideration I may want a bandana coming to the front, either the tails to the front and the V to the back, or the V to the front and the tails in the back. I don't know. I haven't made that decision yet. Right now I'm just trying to roughly get that gross anatomy, the rough shape of everything that I want out of there. And you can use a number of tools. There's a lot of them to use doing this. You can do it with a knife. You can do it with the fishtail gouge that I was doing. It's entirely up to you. From then we're going to move to the back. And what I'm going to do is just put a stop cut right there. I don't want to go into the arm. I want to point away. And so my stop cut's going to come there. And then I would come back in here with a fishtail gouge. And allows me to take some of that wood off and separate that arm from the body. It makes it stick out. And allow us to take these hard edges off, because once you take an edge off, once you start carving in, you're going to leave edges here. And the question is, you know, what kind of edge do you want? Do you want it rounded over? Do you want it high in the middle and then the arms pretty deep? Because right now, compared to the inside, we haven't carved much on the outside. So let's take a few minutes and we'll get to that point. And we're just going to use this Stubai gouge that I got because I really like it for heavy duty gouging. I like the smaller Drake one because I've had it for a long time, and it's a thinner one, so it's not quite as hefty as this one in terms of the torque you can add to it. This one you can really see the difference in the thickness of the two tools. There, you got to be real careful when you're doing that because this one's much more flexible as opposed to this one. This one is, it'll do a lot of things that other one won't, simply because of the nature of the thickness of the metal. So I'm going to round this, and I'm sure if you've been carving for any amount of time, you've watched a lot of carvers, and they don't work in just one area alone and then move over to another one. Most of us work around the carving because what we want to do is work at everything in symmetry. Even though we may not be holding to the true symmetry of realistic carving, we're still going to want to make sure that I don't take a lot of wood off here, and then I flip over here and find out I can't take the same amount of wood off here. I've got to make sure that I am being true to the piece of wood that I have so that I can do the same thing to one side that I do to the other. And all I'm doing is just trying to round that back side and separate that arm a little bit. Again, I'm carving kind of in an awkward position because I don't usually carve up here on the table. I usually have this in my lap, and there's an advantage to that. I have gravity working with me when I'm in my lap because I can go down to the center of the earth and gravity's pulling you that way. And plus, it's a little more sturdy. I've got it sandwiched in between my legs. My arms are tucked into my body. Here they're not, and so it gets a little bit more difficult to do that. But you carve any way you want. I'm carving this way because I want you to be able to see it, and I don't want you to have several videos of you staring at my lap because it probably be very uncomfortable for some of you, and the camera angle wouldn't be very good either. So we're doing it up here on top of the table, and that's just the way it's going to work. Anyway, you can see how we're starting to shape a few things and get to where it's going. The next thing I would start trying, let's work on the head a little bit. One of the things I noticed when I was working on it, I said, you want to leave your ears big, and then I realized I left these ears big, and I don't really want them that big. So I'm going to trim these down a little bit more because I made big ears, and that ear is going to coincide with the top of the bottom of the eyebrow, and the ear is going to correspond with the bottom of the nose, and you can see there's some space here. Being caricature, I can change that. So what I want to do is make a smaller ear. And I think when I look at that ear looks a whole lot better than the great big ear that I have over here. So if I do the same thing over here, that ear is coming right to the bottom of that sideburn. So I don't want to make it much bigger, but I also realize I'm going to take a lot of this off. I'm still not getting that where I want it to go. I'm going to take a lot of this off because the ear's going to be angled in that way, and we don't want the ear coming all the way out to the edge of the hat. So what I'm going to do is, now that I know where that's at, I just want to take my fishtail gouge or V-tool, outline the ear. That lets me know what's coming off. And that means from that point on, I can start removing some wood. So I'm going to lay the knife away from the ear, because if I do it under the ear, I'm going to make it too thin and it may break off as I carve in. This will help us move that ear back in toward the head and make it to where it doesn't look like it sticks out of the head itself. So I'm just removing wood. And that'll allow me to move everything back to where I can get to that. I can make the hat stick out a little bit more, and I can provide a little more space for hair. And so when I move that back in there, I'm just taking off some of the heft that I had left in there to start with that I don't necessarily want in this ear anymore. Now the face is still square. I'm not really worried about the jawline just yet. I'm more worried about getting this ear shaped in so that I've got room to do a little more work on that. So right now, again, I'm just removing wood. Oop. It's not a sound you want to do very much, but these thicker blades can handle that. It'll skip across there without leaving you a whole lot of marks on the tool. And then we're going to take a layer off that helps push that ear back into the head a little more. We don't want that thing sticking out, because we do not want ears that look like they just were glued on the head. Maybe you can get by with that a few times if you hide the glue line or make it to where it's right, but really, and most of the time, what we want to do is make sure that we're not making it just so goofy looking that you can't really get what you want. You still have a lot of bulk back here. That'll allow us to get some kind of part of the bandana here and a little bit of the hair. But we're going to do the same thing over here. We're just going to outline that with the V-tool. And then we're going to go in and lay that knife away from the ear so that we're not undercutting the ear too much, and just remove some of this stuff. I did the harder ear first because it was upside down. This one should be a little bit easier because I'm looking straight at it like an ear would. And the angles are a little more amenable to right-handed carvers, so you can get in here and really take off a little bit more at a time, even if you have to flip it upside down. You know, sometimes watching carving take place is like watching sausage being made. I grew up on a pig farm in Tennessee, so I've seen a lot of sausage get made from the butchering part all the way down to the eating part. And so sometimes you watch a carver and one carves very clean and very meticulous, and one is scattering chips all over the place. When I joined the club that I was in, we had a famous carver that he always mentioned big chips. He'd always talk about big chips. And so the joke went around that he was able to keep 2 chips in the air at all times. And the only way I can do that is if I have one in my mouth and one I'm carving off, and as soon as the one on the wood comes off, I spit the one out of my mouth. It's the only way I can keep 2 chips in there at the same time. But I don't know that that's important. I like I said earlier, I do a lot of carving and I do a lot of teaching, and sometimes it gets to be I need to be in a hurry because I'm coming up with a project for another class, and I've got the project idea. I just don't have the project done the way I want it to, and so I'm working really hard, and sometimes I've got to work really fast to get to that point. So anyway, just like on the other side, I'm just removing wood. I'm getting some of that heft off of there so that I can get to the point where I can shape the head, the hair, the bandana, and everything else. And so as we come to the end of video number 9, I think this fella is starting to shape up, and we're going to start adding some details here as soon as we get some more of the heft off here, here, and here. So on to video number 10. I'll talk to you later.